The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
The most radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on the Spin-off or wherever you get your podcasts. Kia ora tātou, this is Toby Manhire with another episode of your friendly local politics podcast, Gone by Lunchtime. What you're about to hear is part of the Gone by Lunchtime Megapod, a 12-hour epic event recorded on September 20 at Spin-off HQ. Enjoy. Tēnā koutou katoa. This is Gone by Lunchtime Election 2023 Megapod, and I'm hoping that we have on the phone Grant Robertson. Hello, Grant.
Kia ora, Toby. If that is you sound slightly like Darth Vader.
Really?
All right.
Oh, okay. It's been a long day, so hopefully that settles down in a second. We call you the finance spokesperson for the Labour Party now, don't we? That's the done thing.
I believe in this period of time you do that, yes.
A few quick questions that we're rolling through with everyone who comes on today. First is, to go in to win a box of chocolate fish, can you guess, please, to 1 decimal point what the turnout will be in the election?
Oh, good question. I think it will be 78.4.
78.4 said with confidence. Very good. Second question, political television shows, which is the one that you would take to a desert island if you could only have one? You won't be surprised to hear that Andrew Geddes just selected Borgen, of course.
Of course he did. God. I would take the thick of it.
Okay, the thick of it, good. And finally, the most important theme of the election is, of course, mojo and what's happened to it, where it's gone, where we can find it. We're doing a scientific study with all our guests, asking them, how is your personal level of mojo of this moment, ranging from 0 being none, gone, lost it, can't find it, and 10, can't move for the mojo, absolutely surrounded in mojo.
Look, I think the number 8 out of 10 is very fashionable at the moment. So I'm gonna pump for 8 out of 10 of level 8 mojo at this point.
Very good. Did you watch the debate last night?
I did. Yes, I did watch it.
Did you make it all the way through?
Yeah. I did. I didn't make it through the panel at the end.
Okay.
My apologies to my former colleagues there, but no, I did make it through the debate. Yep.
David Cunliffe doing quite good punditry, I think, at the end there. Looking,
I missed that.
He's been absent for a while. Good to have him back. Looking quite cattish. Do you remember cats? Do you remember cats that look like David Cunliffe from back in the day?
Well, yeah, I do remember that. Beard or no beard?
Sort of like half to 2/3 beard. I'm not sure.
What's that? Has that got a name? Is that something the kids are doing nowadays?
Probably. He's an influencer now. I wanted to ask you about 2005 briefly, because that's come up a bit in the course of this campaign as a sort of, I guess, a precedent, mostly from Labour-associated people as a kind of inspiration. Look, we can turn this around. Legend has it that Grant Robertson was a staffer on that campaign and came up, it was from before the campaign, with the interest off student loans thing. Is that a true story?
It's a true story that I worked on that policy. I'm not sure quite. I remember being in meetings where we were talking about what to do in that space, and yeah, it was massive. That was a little bit before the campaign that we came up with it and did it, and there was a group of us who worked over a period of time in secret. We were called the Thursday Group because we had to come up with a name so that people didn't know what we were working on. And yeah, I was certainly there for that, and then through the campaign as well, which was obviously a memorable one for loads of reasons, but it was the 2005 campaign, so you had Don Brash and you had Helen, and very different approaches. And yeah, there are similarities to this campaign. Certainly the use of race is one of those by some of our opponents, but every election's got its own character, I reckon.
Is there a Thursday Group currently at work in the back rooms of the Labour Party? When are they going to come up with the policy?
Look, there probably is a Thursday Group, but nowadays I wouldn't get told about it because it wouldn't be me. No, look, we've put out not all of our policies. There's a couple more things to come in the next few days, but we've put out the majority of our policy.
Chris Hipkins said last week, after the News Hub poll, I think, that there's a mood for change in the country. Do you agree with that?
To an extent, I do, yeah. I mean, I made some comments at Prefu along kind of similar lines, but what I sense in the community is that people are tired, that they're anxious, that they're a bit grumpy, and they want those things to change. And you know, they've experienced spikes in the cost of living on top of COVID and everything else that might be going on. And so, you know, I think that drives a mood for change. And I guess the question I raised that day at Prefu was, okay, I understand that and fully understand why people want things to change in their lives in that way, but will a change of government actually deliver that? And in my view, it won't. It will deliver other sorts of changes that'll be negative for those people. But I think I understand what Chris is saying, you know, when we're out and about. It's been hard, it's been tough, and people want that to change. And that mood is definitely part of the campaign.
And when you wake up in the morning and see reports saying that petrol is on its way up to $3.50 a litre, is there part of you that just wants to roll over? I mean, it's, you know, people use the headwinds cliche, but there must be times when you think, oh, for fuck's sake.
I think it's just continuous headwinds in the 6 years that I've been here, or the majority of them anyway. You look at, you know, I mean, those sorts of things, as you're kind of alluding to, are significantly beyond our control. And, you know, oil prices around the world are spiking. There's all sorts of fun and games going on among the OPEC countries on production that is pushing the price up, and we're at the end of that supply chain. So, yep, there is definitely some headwinds, but equally, I can also, you know, see the New Zealand economy as pretty robust and certainly turning a corner in terms of where we've been with inflation and so on. So, you know, there are ups and downs, and, you know, I contemplate them all before rolling out of bed in the morning.
One of the criticisms that's been levelled is that, sure, COVID, people understand that. It was not something that anyone had in their playbook and things had to change. But that, to quote Nicola Willis, every single year, Grant Robertson has blown the budget and broken his spending limits. What's your answer to that? For the years that aren't the COVID years, put the COVID to one side.
Yeah. Look, well, yeah, I don't know that we can all completely agree on when COVID, under Nicola's definition, on when COVID stopped, because obviously when we were dealing with both Delta and then the Omicron through 21 and into early 22, you know, there was still significant strain on us there. So I'm not sure I buy the framing. But regardless, my response to the point about that is she's referring to what are called our budget allowances.
Yeah.
We set those in December each year for the budget in May the next year. Things often happen between December and May. Ergo, this year, where we had a major cyclone and the Auckland anniversary weekend floods, and you have to respond to those things as they arise. The second thing I'd say, too, is that the budget allowances are a means to an end. And for me, the ends are the fiscal rules that we've set ourselves, which include getting ourselves back into surplus over the 4-year period we're in, and keeping debt under 30% of GDP. And we've been able occasionally to invest more in a budget, but still keep to where we said we would be in terms of debt particularly. And so for me, we have to respond to what's in front of us. At this budget, inflation stuck around for higher. We had the floods. We had to spend a little bit more, but ultimately we get measured on those bigger picture indicators, and less partisan commentators than Nicola, such as Moody's and Standard & Poor's and so on, have said that they think that we're doing a pretty good job of getting through and rebuilding the economy.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I cordial with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, Senior Writer at The Spin-off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Just on COVID, since that came up, one of the things I've thought a few times over the course of this campaign is, I'll tell you when, one was at that Bloomberg address, I think you were there, when Chris Hipkins spoke, and the other was at the debate last night. When Chris Hipkins started talking about COVID, he sort of got a bit of energy, I think. And I totally understand why a decision has been taken, or I assume a decision has been taken, not to talk about COVID. People don't want to talk about COVID. None of us wants to have a conversation about COVID. It's that really annoying rash that we've got rid of or whatever. On the other hand, it's arguably the singular achievement of the 6 years in government for you guys. And there were things that were achieved there that can be sold to a public. Is that a missed opportunity? And is there an argument that actually, let's talk about COVID. No one wants to talk about it, but we would be in a far worse place if we hadn't taken these decisions we'd taken?
Yeah, I recall reading a commentator, Mr. Toby Manhire, making this point, I believe, in a recent column. And look, I've got some sympathy for the view. I tend in my economic speeches to talk a bit more about COVID because it is still the backdrop to the place that we are now. And you also would have heard me somewhat overuse the phrase about hindsight economics, because the issue here is the decisions that we made in COVID to support New Zealanders' businesses, households, the health system, all of those decisions largely backed by the opposition. In fact, in some cases, they wanted us to go further, always had a consequence because it was largely borrowed money. And so I find that if you don't have that context, it's pretty hard to understand how net debt is where it is, or why the economy is in this place that it is. So, yeah, I do tend to talk about it. I think where people, when I mentioned before the tiredness, the grumpiness and the anxiety, a fair bit of that emerges from COVID, and I think that's why people are reluctant to have it as the sort of frame, because everybody is desperate to look forwards. But it is undoubtedly context. And when it comes to Chris specifically, I thought there were a few moments last night where he sparked up. Talking about inequities in the health system was one where he really did, and climate change was another. But he absolutely has a really good story to tell about a person who had to take some enormously difficult decisions and, filter through a lot of different information, deal with a lot of different people, and he should be rightly proud of his role there. So, yep, I think it's important that he's recognised for that, and where we can find opportunities, we take them. But I suspect if we talk about it too much, we do trigger a few things for people.
We've got the series that we do called Youth Wings, which is all the interesting and cool people who are standing for the youth wings of their parties. And in the Young Labour episode yesterday, the father of the young Labour leader, Jazz McIntosh, says Labour is a centrist party now, and says it with no enthusiasm, sort of bemoans it. Do you think that's fair? Do you think? Is it inarguable? Is Labour a centrist party now?
No, I think Labour is a centre-left party, a social democratic party, and it's been that for a long time. And I think when you look at obviously the 84 to 90 era, we take out of the picture as being a frightening experiment. But otherwise, we've been a social democrat party since we kind of got back into government after the first Labor government. So I don't think it's changed that much, and I don't think a centrist party would be as focused on fair pay agreements or the work we've done necessarily in state housing and so on. I think there's areas of work that we've done, and including in the social areas as well, decriminalising abortion and these sorts of things, where I think we can demonstrate that we're a genuinely centre-left party rather than purely centrist. I think in this campaign, obviously because there are parties to the left, parties to the right, you get the kind of contrast. I guess the point about being the Labor Party, and I guess if you were talking to someone from the National Party, they might say this too, but being the party that is leading the government, inevitably, in order to do that, we are looking to get votes from people who themselves would call themselves centrist. And so, it all becomes a little bit secular and self-defining. But no, I think if you look at us, we're firmly in the social democratic tradition of a centre-left Labor Party.
You mentioned 84 to 90, and you were sort of forged in that fire in a way, as best I understand it. That was a kind of inspirational, to use the word, in one direction for you and your political identity. Is that fair to say?
It is. Yeah, it absolutely is. In both directions, really, in the sense that, and I talked about this in my maiden speech in Parliament, in the sense that I found David Lange as I wasn't a deeply informed 13, 14, 15-year-old, but I found him inspirational. The joke I told him, the big guy with glasses, overweight guy with glasses kind of thing, he was an inspiring figure. But I mean that seriously, and I do have visceral memories of the Oxford Union debate and of just the kind of person he was, and of some other things that government did, including stuff like homosexual law reform and establishing the Ministry of Women's Affairs and, some Treaty of Waitangi settlement basis stuff, really, really big transformational things. But the other side of it was a deep distrust and eventually dislike of Rogernomics, and certainly down in Dunedin where I grew up, I saw the impact of the speed and the haste with which those reforms were undertaken, and they were clearly designed to advance an agenda that was antithetical to the Labour movement, which of course eventually led Roger and his crew to bugger off and form ACT.
And when you, as we, at the twilight of the second term of the Labour government, which you've been this instrumental force, what is your hand-on-heart assessment in terms of how much you've done to redress that Roger Douglas, Ruth Richardson impact? I know that there was a budget last year that was important in terms of benefits, but do you feel as though you've done as much as you would have liked to redress that legacy?
I certainly think we've taken some pretty big steps, and the budget you're talking about is actually the 2021 one,
right.
Which the first part of which I indulged myself a little bit in the speech and a bit of less prose, more poetry to really highlight that 30 years on. I do think that we have done a number of things that have done that, particularly around things like main benefits, fair pay agreements coming in, some of the work we've done making tertiary education fees free for that first year. So there's significant things I think that have turned that around. Where it's been harder is in some of the architecture of that time. And, one of my phrases, again, probably a little overused, is that it's much easier to squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube than it is to stuff it back in. And when I look at, for example, the energy sector in New Zealand, and I think Max Bradford really did a number on New Zealanders there, but getting that all back together again, for example, is really difficult and extremely costly. And you inevitably end up having to kind of work around that, find different ways of dealing with the issues rather than perhaps some of the more structural elements. And the other bit, which I think I have made some progress in, is reforms around both the Public Finance Act and the Reserve Bank Act, where they were kind of central, pieces of the changes, the Public Service Act, which was the State Sector Act. We've done reforms in all three of those areas. There's more to do there, but I do think getting to that a bit of unfinished business, to coin a phrase that I think Roger might have used.
Yeah, quite right. I will let you go. You have things to do. Last thing, though, you're on the list only this time. You're missing the Wellington Central campaign beat?
In a strange way, yeah, I am actually. I'm certainly, supporting Ibrahim Omar, our candidate, in the background. Sure. But the Wellington Central, any electorate campaign, I think gives shape to an election campaign. My role at the moment, sort of travelling around the country, supporting people and doing a bit of sort of strategic stuff here in Wellington, and it's very different from the rhythm of door knocking and phone calling. And in Wellington Central, they have this ridiculous number of public meetings. I think Ibrahim's doing 20 or something of them. And so you do have a real kind of cornerstone of your campaign. I've been door knocking in other places and I've been meeting people, so I'm certainly still connected to the campaign. But yeah, it's funny. It's very, very different. I mean, I don't regret the decision. It was the right decision. But and it's an interesting race, as Wellington Central always is.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's fascinating. Hey, thank you, Grant. Good luck with the rest of the campaign, and speak soon.
Cheers, Toby. Thank you.
That was Grant Robertson. We are going to try to get on the phone now. Rough Mungie. Should we go away for a minute and then come back? What's the best bet? Yeah, we're going to go away for a minute. We're going to come back. It's going to be really short, though. It's going to turn this one around lickety-spit. This is the Megapod. Thanks for listening. There's plenty more where this came from on your Gone By Lunchtime feed. Thanks to Jane, Te Aihe and Samuel, and the rest of the team at The Spin-Off for making the Megapod happen.
Do you find it hard staying optimistic with all the financial news in the media? I'm Bernard Hickey, and on my podcast, When the Facts Change, I'm here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of economics in Aotearoa. So join the conversation every Friday on When the Facts Change, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBet.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.